You know, there's a hard truth that sooner or later we all have to face. People who genuinely care about you are consistent. They may not be perfect, and sure, they have their off days, but their love, their concern, and their presence remain steady, like a lighthouse in the storm. On the flip side, when someone doesn't truly care, the most obvious sign is inconsistency. Not just a rough patch or a bad day, but a pattern, a cold, distant rhythm. When you need them most, it's as if they vanish into thin air. Have you ever felt like a stranger in a relationship you once thought was your safe place? One day they're kind, attentive, thoughtful. The next, it's like you don't even exist. That's not love. That's confusion with a pretty mask on. And let me remind you, God is not the author of confusion. He is the God of clarity, peace, and unwavering love. So if you constantly feel like you're walking on eggshells, anxious, uncertain, it's time to pause and ask yourself, why am I holding on to someone who keeps letting go of me? Real love doesn't leave you guessing. It doesn't leave you in the dark. A person who truly cares won't make you decode their every emotion or intention. You won't spend your nights wondering where you stand. Love doesn't live in shadows. It dwells in the light. The enemy knows this. That's why he uses inconsistency to sneak doubt into your heart, making you question your worth. One moment you feel seen, the next you feel invisible. That's not love. That's manipulation. Someone who doesn't care will keep playing this game until your spirit is dry and your joy is gone. But let me tell you this, you are worth so much more than that. Consistency is the heartbeat of care. It's not about grand gestures, it's about showing up, quietly, faithfully, without being asked. Real love doesn't wait for the convenient moment. It shows up even when it costs something. That's how you know it's real. And then there are those who are consistent in only one thing, their inconsistency. They disappear when you're at your lowest, only to reappear when they need something. That's not a relationship, that's a transaction. And transactional relationships will always crumble under the pressure of real life. When grief hits, when storms rage, when life breaks wide open. Some of you have been blaming yourselves for their inconsistency, thinking, maybe if I were quieter, needed less, looked better, acted easier, they'd stay. No, my friend. You don't need to shapeshift to keep the ones who are meant to walk with you. You don't need to shrink just to be loved. True love makes room. Real care shows up. And let's be honest, some people only keep you around for the comfort you bring, not the connection you offer. They're not investing in you. They're extracting from you. And when someone only shows up when it's easy or beneficial, that's not consistency, that's calculation. That's not care, that's control. God created you with worth, with purpose, with dignity. And when someone treats you like you're optional, believe this, God sees them as temporary. Stop chasing after those who keep changing the rules. If they were truly sent by God, you wouldn't be confused all the time. You wouldn't feel small, unseen, or disposable. You'd feel safe. You'd feel known. You'd feel covered. I want to speak to you, the one still waiting for them to return to how they used to be. Let me tell you something. The version you fell in love with was often just a mask. You can't keep clinging to 2 sweet weeks while ignoring 2 painful years. Inconsistency is not something to fix, it's something to flee. And sometimes that cold silence they call being complicated isn't because they're too deep, it's because they're too careless. And you know what? This might be the moment to step into a new chapter where peace becomes your portion again. And in page 2, we'll go deeper into what that healing journey looks like. You probably still remember what we touched on earlier. When someone no longer truly loves you, they'll make you feel like your very existence is a burden. Now, we continue unfolding the quiet, cutting signs that love has left the kind that echo loudest in the silence. Have you ever felt it? That heavy weight when you open your mouth to speak and they roll their eyes, shift their posture, or their energy suddenly changes. That silent rejection, it cuts deep. Because when someone doesn't care about you, they'll make you feel like you're too much, too needy, too emotional, too loud. They won't say it out loud, but their sighs, their silence, and their sudden distance speak volumes. And that's when you know love has already walked out of the room. You were never created to beg for belonging. God didn't form you to walk on eggshells. Real love doesn't treat you like a duty. Genuine care never sees your heart as a hassle. When someone truly values you, your pain matters to them. You were never created to beg for belonging. God didn't form you to walk on eggshells. Real love doesn't treat you like a duty. Genuine care never sees your heart as a hassle. When someone truly values you, your pain matters to them. Your voice matters. Your joy and your sorrow aren't a burden to carry, they are a privilege to hold. But those who don't care about you, they dodge your emotions like a disease. The moment you bring up something real, your disappointment, your fear, your desire for a deeper connection, they shut down. They grow cold. They say you're too sensitive, too dramatic, or always causing problems. But that's not your fault. That's not a flaw in you. That's their refusal to meet you at the level your soul needs. It's subtle, isn't it? The way they make you second guess whether you're asking for too much. But you're not. You're asking for the bare minimum. Respect, presence, understanding. Somewhere along the way, the world taught you that needing these things makes you needy. But God says, cast your cares on me. Why? Because He cares for you. That's the standard. True care looks like showing up, not criticizing. Real love leans in, not away. And I know some of you have been pouring your heart out to people who just stare blankly at you, people who nod but don't really listen, people who wait for their turn to talk instead of hearing your soul cry out. And that silent neglect, it screams inside, doesn't it? You walk away from those conversations feeling even lonelier than before they started. That's not care. That's presence without purpose. That's proximity without compassion. When someone truly cares, they feel your weight without you needing to scream. They see your tears before they fall. They lean in when you start to tremble. You don't have to perform. You don't have to impress. You don't have to shrink yourself. You just have to be, and they hold that space with grace. That's what love does. That's what care looks like. Love doesn't flinch at the sight of your wounds. It binds them. It doesn't disappear when you're low. It stays. Especially in the silence. And let me say something to the one who's been carrying the friendship, the relationship, the family dynamic all by yourself. You've been the one initiating the calls, the check-ins, the plans, the apologies. But when you finally need someone to lean on, no one's there. That's not a relationship. That's imbalance. That's a one-way street leading straight to emotional exhaustion. God never meant for you to live in emotional starvation, surviving on crumbs of attention and scraps of affection. If someone keeps you guessing whether your needs are welcome, they've already answered the question. You're not hard to love. You're just loving people who aren't committed to loving you back. Next, we'll look at a hard truth that may surprise you. Sometimes, you're handing your heart to someone who never knew how to hold it in the first place. Before they stop calling, they've already stopped being present in spirit. Their body remains, but their intention left long ago. You have to open your eyes to the patterns. If someone only shows up when they're low, but disappears the moment you're running on empty, believe that. Don't keep justifying selfishness just because you're afraid of being alone. There's a kind of loneliness worse than solitude. It's the kind that comes from staying connected to people who never truly show up for you. At least when you're alone, you know where you stand. But with them, you're always hoping. always waiting, always second-guessing. Some of you have been so generous for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to receive. You've been pouring yourself out, your heart, your energy, your time, hoping that one day they'd notice, hoping that one day they'd give back the same way. But they never do. And it's not because you haven't given enough. It's because they never intended to give at all. The enemy loves relationships like that, where one person is constantly drained, while the other feels entitled, where one keeps investing and the other keeps withdrawing. It creates distraction. It creates discouragement. And worst of all, it keeps you from stepping into the calling God has placed over your life. Because your strength is being spent on people who were never meant to walk this journey with you. Hear me. You are not a backup plan. You are not someone's escape hatch. You are not their fixer, their filler, or their fallback. You are a child of God, created in His image, filled with purpose and promise, and anyone who does not treat you with that same honor is not sent to stay. Maybe they were a lesson, maybe they were passing through, but they are not your life's assignment. God doesn't send people to drain you. He sends people who sharpen you, challenge you in love, and walk with you in truth. So if someone only calls when they need help, but never when you need hope, that's not your person. That's not your tribe. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be bitter, but you do need to be wise. And sometimes, wisdom looks like closing the door to people who only knock with empty hands. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: silence speaks, and often it screams. You reach out in kindness, in sincerity, with a heart full of hope, and are met with nothing. No response, no answer, just an echoing void. And then come the questions. Did I say something wrong? Did I expect too much? Am I not even worth a reply? Let me tell you this: silence is an answer. And when someone truly cares about you, they don't leave you wondering. There is a quiet cruelty in being ignored. It's not loud, but it cuts deep. Because it's not just about the absence of words, it's the message beneath the silence. When someone ignores your messages, your calls, your efforts to connect, they are saying something without words you're not important enough to respond to. And that kind of dismissal, that is not love. That is not care. That is not the fruit of a heart that truly values yours. God is not the author of confusion. He does not teach us to play games with people's emotions. He doesn't instruct us to withhold affection or punish people with silence. He teaches us to love with clarity, to speak truth in love, to respond when we're called. So, when someone habitually ignores you, not just once, not just when life is heavy, but as a pattern that shows no regard for your heart, they are telling you exactly how they feel. And you must be willing to receive that message, even if it never comes in words. I know it hurts, because you remember when things felt different. You remember the laughter, the closeness, the effort they used to give. You remember how quickly they used to reply, how they used to make time for you, how much you seemed to matter. And now, you're staring at a screen, waiting for a reply that never comes. You're sitting with your phone in hand, trying to make sense of a silence that was never supposed to be there. But let me remind you of something eternal. Your value does not decrease just because someone refuses to acknowledge it. God doesn't wait days to hear from you. He doesn't leave your prayers on read. He answers. He listens. He cares. That is the model. That is the standard. And if someone consistently withholds even the most basic level of respect, that is not your cue to chase them. That is your cue to choose yourself. Some people confuse distance with dignity. They think that by ignoring you, they hold power over you. But there is no power in indifference, only proof that the connection has grown cold. And when love turns cold, it is no longer safe to warm yourself by its fire. You must walk away before you're burned by the absence of what once was. You deserve someone who doesn't make you question whether your message was seen, whether your voice was heard, whether your presence is wanted. You deserve someone who picks up the phone not because they have to, but because they want to. Someone who honors your words, values your heart, and responds not just when it's convenient, but consistently, because they genuinely care. And hear me clearly, your heart is not a burden. Your effort is not too much. If someone makes you feel like it is, that's not your fault. It's their refusal to engage with the weight of real, mutual connection. Sometimes, people don't ignore you because they're busy. They ignore you because they no longer find you useful. And that is the truth we'll begin to face in the next part. Because sometimes, the reason they ignore you isn't because they're overwhelmed. It's because they no longer need you. That's a painful truth to look in the eye, isn't it? You try to make sense of their silence, hoping they're just busy, going through something, lost in their own chaos. But deep down, you know, they're not silent because life is heavy. They're silent because you're no longer useful to them. And that realization hits like a quiet storm. It doesn't shout. It doesn't knock everything over at once. It just creeps in, slowly. It starts with a missed call here, an unanswered message there, a sudden shift in energy, and before you know it, you're sitting with the ache of absence while still pretending there's presence. You weren't wrong to care. You weren't foolish for hoping. But you have to stop carrying the weight of someone else's indifference as if it's your fault. When someone treats you like an afterthought, it says more about their heart than it ever will about your worth. Jesus never made anyone feel used. When people came to him, desperate and broken, he didn't push them away. He didn't withhold affection or offer help with strings attached. He met them right where they were with presence, with healing, with love. And yet here you are, being treated like a convenience store, a place they stop by only when they're on empty, a place to refill, reset, and leave again. And each time they do, you're left more drained, more hollow, more unsure of your value. But here's what I need you to remember. God did not create you to be used and discarded. You are not meant to survive off emotional scraps, hoping one day they'll come back with more. You are worthy of more not because of what you give, but because of who you are. When someone only reaches for your hand as they're falling but disappears when it's your turn to weep, that's not love, that's not friendship, that's emotional dependency wearing a mask. And it wears you down, doesn't it? It makes you question everything, your voice, your presence, your value. You start to wonder if you're too much, if your emotions are too loud, if your needs are too inconvenient. But let me say this as clearly as I can. You are not too much for the right people. The ones who are meant to walk with you won't see your sensitivity as weakness. They won't punish your honesty with distance. They won't disappear in your most vulnerable moments. Remember what Jesus said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." That isn't just about kindness, it's about reciprocity, balance, mutual care. It's about relationships that flow in both directions, not just one. You are not called to be a bottomless well for people who never bring a cup of water to you. And yet, I know it's hard, especially when you have memories. You hold on to the good times, the laughter, the late-night conversations, the plans you once made together. You remember what was. And you hope, maybe, just maybe, it could still be that way again. But love that lives only in memory is a dangerous place to dwell, because what you remember isn't always what they're still offering. Some people stopped choosing you a long time ago, and you're still standing at a door they walked away from. The truth is, closure doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it comes in silence. Sometimes it comes in the slow fade, the unanswered call, the message that never gets a reply. And though it hurts, sometimes that's all the closure you'll ever get. And in the next part, we'll talk about the hardest but most freeing choice of all, choosing to walk away, not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving yourself. If you want to know whether someone is using you, watch what they do when you have nothing left to give. Do they still call? Do they still show up? Do they still listen when the conversation isn't about fixing their problems? Because if the only time they care is when they benefit, then the connection was never truly about you. It was about what you could do. But God doesn't build relationships like that. When the prodigal son returned home with nothing in hand, no riches, no offerings, no reputation, it wasn't a transaction. It was love. It wasn't about what he could provide. It wasn't about usefulness. It was about identity. The father embraced him simply because he was his son. That's what true love does. That's how real care behaves. But far too many people today treat others like vending machines. Press a few emotional buttons, get what you want, and walk away. And when that machine runs dry, they get frustrated. They complain. They leave. They disappear. But hear me clearly. You are not a vending machine. You were not created to pour and pour and pour into people who never intended to pour anything back. You are not here to be everyone's emergency solution while they ignore your everyday pain. And no, it's not selfish to recognize these patterns. It's not prideful to set boundaries with people who only appear when they're desperate. Even Jesus, our Savior, withdrew from the crowds to be alone with the Father. He didn't let everyone pull on him without purpose. He moved with intention. He poured out with wisdom. If he set boundaries, so should you. Don't be fooled by sudden attention. Don't mistake a favor, request for a reconnection. If someone vanishes during your valleys, but suddenly remembers you when they need a ride, a loan, or an emotional rescue, that's not love knocking at your door. That's manipulation wearing a mask of familiarity. And I know it hurts when the one using you is someone close. Maybe it's family. Maybe it's someone you love deeply, someone you sacrificed for, someone you would have gone to war for. But when your soul started bleeding, they wouldn't even lift a finger. If you want to know whether someone is using you, watch what they do when you have nothing left to give. Do they still call? Do they still show up? Do they still listen when the conversation isn't about fixing their problems? Because if the only time they care is when they benefit, then the connection was never truly about you. It was about what you could do. But God doesn't build relationships like that. When the prodigal son returned home with nothing in hand, no riches, no offerings, no reputation, it wasn't a transaction. It was love. It wasn't about what he could provide. It wasn't about usefulness. It was about identity. The father embraced him simply because he was his son. That's what true love does. That's how real care behaves. But far too many people today treat others like vending machines. Press a few emotional buttons, get what you want, and walk away. And when that machine runs dry, they get frustrated. They complain. They leave. They disappear. But hear me clearly, you are not a vending machine. You were not created to pour and pour and pour into people who never intended to pour anything back. You are not here to be everyone's emergency solution while they ignore your everyday pain. And no, it's not selfish to recognize these patterns. It's not prideful to set boundaries with people who only appear when they're desperate. Even Jesus, our Savior, withdrew from the crowds to be alone with the Father. He didn't let everyone pull on him without purpose. He moved with intention. He poured out with wisdom. If he set boundaries, so should you. Don't be fooled by sudden attention. Don't mistake a favor request for a reconnection. If someone vanishes during your valleys but suddenly remembers you when they need a ride, a loan, or an emotional rescue, that's not love knocking at your door. That's manipulation wearing a mask of familiarity. And I know it hurts when the one using you is someone close. Maybe it's family. Maybe it's someone you loved deeply, someone you sacrificed, for someone you would have gone to war for. But when your soul started bleeding, they wouldn't even lift a finger. Still, the truth, even when it stings, will set you free. You were not created to be drained. You were not designed to be used. God crafted you with intention, with value, with dignity. Your time matters. Your energy matters. Your heart matters. So, when someone shows you that they only show up when they're in need, believe them the first time. Stop handing your best to those who only knock when they're at their worst. Real love is consistent. It stays through the silence, not just the storm. It checks in without agenda. It gives without keeping score. It remains even when there's nothing to gain. And yes, this kind of love exists. But you won't find it in people who only remember your name in crisis. So yes, be kind. Absolutely be generous. But above all, be wise. Love with discernment. Serve without slavery. Give, but don't allow yourself to be emptied by those who never intended to fill you. Because when someone truly cares, they don't wait until they need something. They walk with you. They talk with you. They make space for you, even when they need nothing at all. So, don't confuse demand with devotion. And don't confuse attention with affection. Your worth was never meant to be measured by what you provide, but by who you are. And in God's eyes, that's always been more than enough.